Hey everyone, and welcome to Starting on the Bench with Tim V. It's a place where normal people can talk about the sports they love. And on today's topic, we're going to be talking about Australian Football League. That's right, you've heard me. Australian Football League, not NFL or XFL. We're talking about AFL. This is a phenomenon that I've only found out about a week ago, but apparently it's been going on for a century, longer than NFL has existed. It's also known as Aussie or footy, depending on where from down under. AFL has a huge historical value to it, a huge fan base, and I'm absolutely loving it. I watched a few highlights, different things, and I was like, man, this sport is actually super interesting because I'm gonna share a little bit of like different things that makes AFL stand out from any other sport, and I think it's because it borrows different aspects of other sports. Because you'd be watching AFL, one of their games or something like that, and then you realize like, oh my gosh, wait a second, there's I've seen this move before in other sports, and so there would be kicking, passing the ball, or it's not rugby. I hope you understand this is not a rugby. This is like a combination of multiple things, and so I'm excited to share more about this with you. Maybe even so, by the end of this, you'll be a huge AFL fan. Maybe you will join me, join the dark side of cheering on for a football team. I want to continue calling it a football or Aussie or footy. So I think Aussie, in order to respect the heritage of the game, I'm just gonna be calling it Aussie from now on. So it started off in October of 1896, which makes it much older than NFL, because NFL had celebrated their 100th year this past season, and so it's they started in 1920, 1919, 1901 or something like that. By AFL started, like 20, 30 years prior to that. So this is something I'm like, oh my gosh. I've never heard about it, but it's super famous in Australia, in countries and islands around Australia. So, I live in Europe. I follow sports that are in the US as well as in Europe. And so this is something that's interesting. It kind of unites the world together during this pandemic situation. Hope you're staying safe. So, you have 18 teams in total on the AFL, which is super cool because, in basketball you got 30 teams, and then NFL you got 31, I think. And then, obviously soccer, you have so many countries, so many leagues, so many clubs, and all of that. So, first, second, and third tier of sports. So a lot of teams, but AFL only has 18 teams, fourth high attendance, which means there's a lot of fans. So this is like the fourth highest sports attendance, not just in Australia, like in the world, which is super crazy because it's like you think that if you have, let's say, Super Bowl going on, then 100 million people, 120 million people are watching. And if you have NBA finals or something like that, you got 70 million people watching. So there's a lot of viewership, but AFL has consistent fans. So if you got a team, which something that I've realized about myself is that sometimes I'm more a fan of one person rather than the team, but these people are fans of the team. So, your son is going to be cheering for the team. You're going to be cheering for that team, and because your grandfather has cheered for that team. So there's like a whole generation of rooting for one team. And so I feel like that's something that I have to do, and I'm still choosing which team that I'm going to be cheering on for. So 18 teams, they have a weird shaped field, which is, if you think it's football, and then it's kind of like NFL or something like that, this is kind of like an oval but like egg shaped field, which is very interesting because the ball itself is kind of reminded of the rugby ball, but it's a little bit longer. It's a little bit larger. They run around a kick with egg-shaped ball, no pads, only the soccer looking like uniforms. So this is something that they borrowed from uniform. They definitely borrowed, whenever they pass, they have to kick with their thumb or hit it with their thumb. And so this is something from handball. And then whenever they want to kick it, That's the same thing from like soccer or something like that. 18 players on the field and 4 on the bench. So 18 players from one team and 18 players from another team. So you got 26. Look at me doing math. 26. 26 people on the field, which is crazy. 26 people. I mean, but here's the thing. Like, imagine 26 people on the field, on the bench. The field is huge. You have to run around. Obviously, you're playing 4 quarters, and so like the amount of stamina you have to do, and that's the thing. Like in NFL or XFL, you got so many pads. You have more. XFL was trying to do something the NFL was missing, which is more action, more interviews, more things that you want to watch and not pause and switch to whenever they're going to be playing, or waiting until the fourth quarter when something happens, right? But this is something that's like action packed all throughout. Because like if you're a soccer fan, you watch it the whole all 90 minutes, all the 90 plus minutes. But then whenever you're AFL fan, you're like, oh my gosh, it's so nerve wracking, because if you're one of the 90,000 people in the stadium watching it, then it's like a crazy atmosphere. You're going there to like cheer on and just have a blast, have a great time. So having 26 people on the field doing the best job that they can get, so that they could go in the Super Bowl or in the championship is crazy. Plus they have no pads or anything like that, and it's, oh my gosh, it's so interesting. I watched the highlights. Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with it. So the game starts with a set of bounce like the basketball. So they if you're watching, that makes more sense because I'm doing more hand gestures. But if you're listening, thank you so much for listening. So the game starts off with throwing the ball up, and then the players almost jump on each other, sort of, to get the ball to pass it to their own team. So move the ball down the field as a kind of like as a soccer, right? So, if NFL, the quarterback has to pass either straight or back, or behind the line of where he got it, and then pass it forward, right? By this, you can do whatever you want, pass forward, backwards, left or right, whatever you want to do, but you have to pass it as you're hitting the ball with your thumb. So that's something to watch out for. Obviously, move the ball down the field, move the ball 3 ways. So obviously, the running by bouncing every 16 yards. So you're able to run with the ball, but every 16 yards, you have to bounce it off of the ground, which if you got an egg-shaped ball, then you understand that it's like, oh, it's kind of tough. It's kind of, you have to do your best. I'm not that, it would take me a while to learn how to bounce the ball, because I still have issues with bouncing the football, but but this is like a little bit different, more like egg shape, kind of looking like a ball. So it's definitely tougher for them. But if you're training, if you're learning how to play, then it's a lot easier. They get used to it, right? First, to hit it forward, like a handball or something like that, you have to hit it forward, and then kicking it is the most common way. So you can kick the ball. You can either hit the ball or kick the ball forward or backwards or whatever. But you obviously want to move forward or pass it or something like that, right? So no offside rules, because there are no offside. So if the ball is not able to go, unless you kick it so high that it goes over the goal or on the bleachers, then obviously the other team gets it. But there's no offside, or there's no, you have to pass it and catch the ball. So that's definitely, I would urge you to go and look at the highlights too. If this doesn't make sense, go and watch some of the highlights. I'm probably gonna link some of the highlights on my YouTube page, YouTube video, just for you to understand what I'm talking about. Just like one of the most severe and most tense highlights, because like, dude, these people, they average between 5'8" and 7 feet tall. So if somebody can be 5'8", I'm 5'11" or 5'10", 5'11", I don't know, and then somebody else is able to be 7 feet tall. So it varies with height, which is crazy, because it feels like you're either playing people who does CrossFit, or you playing basketball looking like players. So it's kind of crazy, and especially if you're like, if somebody's on your team, if somebody's kicking the ball, then they if somebody's kicking the ball, and then you want to catch it, but there's an opponent in front of you, technically you're able to jump on them and catch the ball. And that's something, those highlights it's a huge thing. I was like, I thought in the beginning, I was like, you're not allowed to do that. Like, that's crazy. Like, Are you? That's illegal. But apparently no. That's the fun of it. Is it because you're able to, you can be 7 feet tall and catch it, and then you can be 5'8" and jump on the 7 feet tall person. So it's kind of crazy. Obviously the scoring is a little bit different. So you got 4 posts. So you got two posts in the middle and 2 posts on the outside. So in the middle, you can score if you kick the ball. You can only kick the ball in order to score. So if you kick the ball, you get 6 points for that. If you hit the post on the exterior ones, you get 1 point. You're like, okay, so if it's 4 quarters, how does it work? So it has 4 quarters and it's 20 minutes each. And if they're running like soccer players run, time added at the end as well. So we're talking about 2, 4, 6, 8, 80 minutes. Plus you can add a little more extra time. Listen, the score can go up to 130. You think that basketball is insane whenever they play the whole quarters? All 4 quarters, and then get up to like 110, 20, 30, whatever. You have to run around and kick the ball so that you can get the 6 points, which is crazy. That's when it's like, all right, some people are like, oh, I really want to get the 6 points, but at the same time, if I get the 1, it's not a problem, right? But at the same time, it's like, oh my gosh, hold a second. You're saying that you can get up to 130 points in the game? Yeah, that's true. You can have like a 60 to 130. You can get 130, 135. It can be 130, 131 or something like that. Or it can be like 60, 65. Who knows, So that's something that's really interesting to watch because it is almost unpredictable because you're not really sure how things are going to go. So obviously, the defenders, the way you have players, because, you got in NFL, you got quarterback, then you got running backs, fullbacks, wide receiver, offensive line, safety, and all of that. Here you have defenders who defend, forwards who go forward, and midfielders who are in the middle. So it's kind of like they're borrowing the soccer identity of that. So if you got somebody who's a forward, they're more closer to the end to the post to score. Then you got midfielders who are more, I guess, like chunkier, so they're able to run back and forth. And then you got the big guys who are midfield. So, the defenders, so they're able to catch it. So I'm still learning about this game, and I'm still learning about the benefits of it, but still it's so entertaining. Oh my gosh. So you're like, okay, how can you take the ball? So the way you can take the ball is by tackling another person, right? So if you're in the midfield and you're kicking the ball and you want somebody to get a free kick or something like that, then you're able to so you're in the midfield, you're kicking the ball so that somebody next to the goals can catch it. And in that area, there's like this 45-degree angle towards the post. Is that if you catch it, then you're able to have a free kick, and nobody's gonna tackle you or something like that. So you're able to have a free kick, right? But your team has to catch it first. If somebody else tackles you while they're catching it, they're able to do that. Or even anywhere during the field, right? So tackling is between the shoulders and the waist. Anything that goes onto your head or to your thighs and all that, it's illegal. So you have to tackle somewhere in the torso, right? Obviously, yeah. So the time and all of that, the season actually, this is something it's interesting because it's way more than any other sport that I've seen, except for, well, I'm sorry, I take that back. Anything that's like compared to like football looking like league. So NFL has 16 weeks plus bye. Then XFL, I'm not really sure how many weeks XFL has, because they were supposed to have this season as a demonstration, but then the whole virus situation happened, so I'm not really sure. But you got 22 weeks of regular season, so 18 teams compete for 22 weeks. Then the top 8 teams go into the playoffs or finals, right? And then top 2 teams meet in the championship. After the finals, the top 2 teams meet in the championship game called the grand final. This is a little bit different from any other sport that I've heard. So grand final or so-called the Super Bowl, and then played in front of 90,000 people. So this is a sport that I can't. How do I say this? It's entertainment, first of all. Second of all, it's sort of, if you know the team and you've been a fan of that team, you obviously will have a lot of fun. This is like the complete opposite of NASCAR, right? Or what is it called? Uh, yeah, I don't know. Golf, I guess. I'm trying to figure out of a boring sport that a lot of people are like, you can go into the kitchen, have lunch, then come back and still watch the same thing. Like people did not move or anything like that. I guess anything that doesn't have like multiple quarters or something like that. But I don't know. It's pretty interesting. So yeah, so that's a brief information. Now, if you ask me, what do I think about it? I think that this is a sport that's definitely beneficial. This is a culture sport. This is not just something that comes up and everybody needs to get along with. Like this has been for a whole century, a little bit more than that. And so for people to watch and follow and all of that, and create this following of these sports is something that's really astonishing. There's no other word to describe that, right? So first of all, the culture. Second of all, they got fantasy league of that. Can you imagine how good your league has to be, the organization especially? And I'm pretty sure that just like with NBA being rigged and NFL having so many lucrative moves and all of that, and they think they're of course thinking about the sport itself rather than the athletes, which is such a human thing to do. So I'm not bashing on any leagues. I'm just saying that it just it is what it is, So having a fantasy league and people taking care of these players and teams and all that, this is also interesting because, again, I've never heard of AFL before until like last week. And we're in April. This is actually April 3rd, 2020. So this is really interesting, right? So I think that that's something that I'm definitely going to be interested in continuing and doing. The fantasy AFL football. So I'm looking forward to the beginning of the season. I know everything's postponed or canceled, so I'm looking forward to that. The other thing, the third part, why I'm so curious and I want you to understand is that they have women WAFL. Now this is something that I really enjoyed women's basketball because you got more athleticism there, and it's more about the team, right? It kind of reminds me of Chicago Bulls of the 90s, right? Where it wasn't just about one person, it was about the team, right? But then you got women's basketball that's really interesting to watch, and it's nothing crazy, just like you're watching for the sheer love of sport. Right? But then you got women's NFL, which is kind of crazy because I'm like, there's also women's rugby, which is I guess it's a thing. I'm still trying to understand. So I'd be curious to watch women's AFL and seeing the teams, seeing the players and how everything is surrounded, right? But everything's happening in Australia, which obviously it's gonna be hard to watch the games live, so you have to be there. And I think that Australia is definitely, if it has such a rich history and following, I think it's gonna be very interesting. It's gonna be very profound to have it every single time you watch it. I'll definitely be a fan of keeping up every single week. You got 22 games, 22 weeks, and stuff like that, so it's gonna be interesting. But yeah. Yeah, I think that's just a sport that I wanted to share with you. Since we're a community, we're a family. But it's going to be interesting. I definitely think that I personally will continue doing that, and I think I'm going to tell everybody around me to go and watch the sport and tell me if they like it. And so, yeah, I think that's it for today. I hope the information has been, well, I think that's all right. That's been it. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Let me know what you think, in comments or whatever. I'm curious. That's my opinion on AFL. I've never heard about the sport, but I'm gonna be a huge fan. I'm gonna have my own team that I'm cheering for, and I'm excited to look forward to the fall when everything is gonna be back to normal and we're out of our houses. So. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and see you in the next one. All right. Peace.